And if you vote for me on day one, I will commute the sentence of Ross Ulbricht to a sentence of time.
That was only one of the many promises that Donald Trump made over the weekend. And after we saw who the candidate was that they chose, many people are asking themselves if now's the time for libertarians to team up with the Make America Great Again Republicans. Joining us now to discuss is Mr. MAGA himself, Alex the Lord. Good morning, Alex. Thank you for joining us on the show today.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. What was your reaction to Donald Trump's speech and the offer that he made to libertarians?
I think it was a good speech, all things considered. Obviously, it's a hostile crowd, and he wasn't quite used to that. He's quite used to going to MAGA rallies with everyone supporting him. But, I mean, the thing is, what irritated me the most was that he was trying to make these offers, and the crowd was just booing straight up and not listening to what he's had to say. And I mean, like things like pardoning Ross, and rejecting the CBDC and protecting crypto and all of these types of things that libertarians, even some of the protesters holding the signs, free Ross, and they're like protesting Trump and being dragged out as he's making he's the one reaching out to them saying, I'm going to do these things, and they're continuing to protest. So that was my first reaction. I'm like hearing the speech and listening to the crowd's reaction. I'm like, aren't these the types of things that you guys have been calling for? And so for them not to be that like receptive, and I understand they had this sort of preconceived notion going in that, oh, Trump is an enemy to libertarians and all of that type of stuff for, people that are just like party guys. But for him to say things like, I want to put libertarians in my cabinet, like that would be massive for libertarians. So it seemed a lot like they weren't taking yes for an answer when like they've been saying, we want these things, and he's telling them yes, and they're booing. So that was kind of my takeaway.
I agree with you, Alex, and I'm glad that we see things in a similar fashion. I guess the question now lies in what Trump expects from libertarians in order for him to consider having to say, well, I live up to my end of the bargain if you live up to your end of the bargain, because there was really no chance from a timing or parliamentary procedure perspective for Donald Trump to actually be nominated and then win the Libertarian Party's nomination. RFK tried and failed miserably. There was a whole process he would have had to go through for that to happen. So I guess my question here is that if enough libertarians say, we think this Chase Oliver character, the one that won the nomination, and I'm going to go through some of his record a little bit after you're off the show this morning. If enough libertarians say, yeah, we want to team up with MAGA Republicans to fight the woke left and to make America great again, what do you think it's going to take? Do you think Donald Trump will keep his promises? What would it take for him to say, I will free Ross Ulbricht on day one, like I said, and I will put a libertarian in my cabinet position? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think he will end up freeing Ross, and he's made the announcement that he's considering pardoning Assange. I think he's going to do these things anyway, because he's had a lot of people like Vivek Ramaswamy in his ear talking about these things anyway. As far as like cabinet level positions, I think it might take a little more, movement on the side of maybe former candidates from the Libertarian Party that were seeking the nomination. And like you said, he kind of made that pitch at the end. I mean, he probably was speaking off the cuff. He didn't file the paperwork to actually become like the nominee. Plus, he is already the nominee of another party, so I'm not quite sure how that would work anyway. But I think maybe some endorsements from different party members might be a step in the right direction, and then maybe some meetings on who he would consider in his next administration and cabinet level positions. He said yesterday, or it aired yesterday on Tim's show, that he's considering as high up as the Attorney General's office to have an attorney general that's a libertarian. So that would be like actually huge. So I think those are some of the things. But like I said, I think he's going to consider doing a lot of these things anyway. Like he's already committed to no central bank digital currency, and WHO treaty and all of those types of things. So I think right now, it's on the table for libertarians to basically vote for someone who's going to deliver and give them these things instead of, like he said, getting the 3% that they're used to max and then getting nothing in return. What is Joe Biden promising them? Absolutely nothing. He didn't show up. He didn't speak to them, and he's done no outreach to libertarians. And as far as Chase Oliver, he's, everyone's digging up all of these old posts on X, whereas he's like cheering on the censorship of Donald Trump, who, he was banned at the behest of all of these government agencies back at Twitter 1.0, when they were colluding to censor him. So I wouldn't call that very libertarian to be, pro censorship of a former president, at the behest of the FBI and all of these agencies. So just these things, I think libertarians just need to look at the two options. Number one, on face value, the two options, and then number two, who's actually going to bring results, because I don't think Chase Oliver has a shot at winning a single state.
Great analysis. And and thank you for your part in being instrumental in helping restore many of these people who were my friends back to the X/Twitter platform. My buddy, Squiggly Line Guy, Squiggs, says hello and thank you for helping him to come back to the platform. Certainly, I've been a big fan of free speech and what Elon Musk has done at X.com. And I think that what's being done to the former president in terms of lawfare should be reason enough to vote for him, but that what he offered to the libertarians was a fantastic deal, considering that the alternative is not 3%, like Donald Trump was saying. The alternative is truly around 1%. He was actually being kind, because 3% was the high water mark in 2016 when I ran for president. Gary Johnson took the nomination. They got 20 in 2020. They got 1% in many of the states. But still, those votes might be the ones that could tip him over in battleground states like Georgia and in other states where the difference might be 1%. Interesting that you say, for the cabinet level position, it might be former presidential candidates. That could be someone like Bob Barr, who's now the head of the NRA. It could be Gary Johnson, or it could be me. So,
never know.
If you're just tuning in to the Wake Up America show, I'm Austin Petersen. I'm glad and thankful to have you here. I'm speaking to Alex Lorusso. He's an executive producer for the Benny Johnson Show, about a potential libertarian MAGA alliance to help reelect Donald Trump this year to fight against the woke left. So libertarians are like herding cats, Alex, but on the other side of things, MAGA Republicans love dunking on me and my libertarian buddies, calling us all kinds of names, autistic, which might be true, but it's kind of mean. Do MAGA Republicans actually want libertarians to be a part of the coalition?
I think they do for the most part. I think some of the vitriol and hostility is coming from a place of, frustration. And especially, like I said, when Trump's, number one, showing up there, that's enough to like say that like he's well-meaning. But like to start booing him when he like is taking the stage before you hear what the guy has to say is just like, to me, is just childlike. Like he's one of the biggest speakers that like, and the first nominee of another party to come speak at the convention or at any other convention, I believe. And, the crowd isn't hearing him out on what he has to say. That's, I think, where things, went south with people online. And I mean, I guess I'm kind of guilty of this, but like, I'm not honestly speaking of libertarians themselves. I'm speaking of the people that are reacting like children. But overall, I do think there's a lot of overlap between libertarians and the MAGA coalition. And generally, like Donald Trump himself said, there's a lot of common sense with libertarians. They want less government and freedom. Like these things are like American ideals, where it starts to, kind of separate is sort of the stuff that Chase Oliver is saying about like, oh, we can't have the government interfering with like surgeries for minors, for like trans surgeries for minors, and then that's kind of where people diverge. It's like, well, okay, we got to have a talk on that kind of stuff. And then the other thing of just looking at the two options for president, and then deciding to vote for someone who isn't going to win states, it's just like a wake up call and say, okay, what do you guys want? You guys are screaming about, I'm voting for principle, but like the guy's not going to win a state. So do you want these concrete potential changes, or do you want to just stand in your corner and cry and say, I'm voting for this, and we're going to put Joe Biden in the White House for another 4 years, and you're going to get zero of what Donald Trump is offering. So that's where I kind of think the frustration is. And I think a lot of that will go away if there's more from the Libertarian side showing that they want to unite with MAGA.
I think that we're probably going to see that. There's a lot of angst after a convention, typically on behalf of the losing party. There was a faction in the Libertarian Party called the Mises Caucus who weren't able to get their candidates across the finish line. They were the more right-leaning libertarians in the party, and many of them have said, and I don't know if this is just bluster because they're upset that they lost, but many of them have said that they can't support Chase Oliver. Many of them have said that they're looking somewhere else. They won't endorse him. So there is a possibility that a significant fraction of the Libertarian Party may be openly willing to talks and may be openly willing to come on board with this strategy. I mean, I joined the Republican Party in 2017 and have been working to try and influence my Missouri State GOP towards more liberty ideals since then, and I've had a lot of success. But you have to show up to these conventions. You have to be willing to work with Republicans, which means working with people that you may not necessarily agree with. The Libertarian Party has all of the same problems that the Republican Party does, with none of the upside, which is what I try and explain to my libertarian friends. You'll have all of the same factionalism and infighting and having to work with people you disagree with and people saying mean things to you one day and then wanting to be your best friend the next day. But you're also going to win elections every once in a while. But what should I say? Because many of my libertarian friends, they're reaching out to me, not overtly, but many of them covertly, asking for my advice about supporting Donald Trump. What would you suggest I say to them when they say things like, will he keep his promises that he made? Will he come out and say things like due process? I like to take the guns first and due process second. And, he's had a few things that even conservatives, should blow our hair back and make us concerned. What should I say to them to sort of allay their fears going into the fall election of why libertarians should vote for Donald Trump?
Yeah, I think some things that you should say is to look at what Donald Trump did in 2000. He was a Reform Party candidate. And then, obviously he didn't end up accepting the nomination for the Reform Party. But then when he decided to run for president again, he sort of took the Reform Party's platform and what his views were back then and kind of infiltrated the Republican Party himself, or the GOP at the time. And if you remember in 2016, the entire Republican Party, right down in the GOP convention, was against him and tried to, contest the convention. Like at the time, I don't think Ted Cruz like spoke at the convention and didn't even say vote Trump. He picked a VP before or after the fact that he didn't even have the math to win. So the way Donald Trump put his policies and his vision into the Republican Party and really transformed the party was from the outside in. He went and became the nominee against all odds. So he became, immigration really took the forefront of the Republican, party platform in 2016. And then also the Republican Party became the anti-war party. And that's thanks to Donald Trump, I think. So I think that could be sort of a model for libertarians who want to change the Republican Party. Is not, I shouldn't really use the word infiltrate, but like have the, positive impact. Have a meeting with Donald Trump. You could publicly say, I am a libertarian, ex-presidential candidate or party official or whatever, and this is a group of people that are willing to meet with Donald Trump to ensure that he's going to keep his promises and, sit down and talk with the guy and take him up on the offers that he's had. I think something like that would be pretty huge in a next step that, could be against Oliver. If there is a contingent of people in the Libertarian Party that want to move forward with something like that and have a concrete step, and maybe have some ideas for Trump for potential cabinet officials in the next administration. Just being open to the meeting in general, and then talking it out with the guy. So I think those are some suggestions.
I think that's a great suggestion, Alex, and I'm hoping that I can convince enough of my friends in the Libertarian Party and Libertarian movement in general to get on board with that strategy, because time is ticking and we've got to beat Joe Biden this fall. The November elections are coming, and we have a lot of work to do between now and then. How are you feeling about the potential for Donald Trump to beat Joe Biden in November?
I think, as you say, time is ticking, but also it is a long way to the actual election. There's a lot that can happen. Obviously, last election we had a pandemic that threw everything off, and there were some irregularities during the election. So, like, right now, polling looks good, and I think even people that consider themselves Democrats or younger voters or minorities are ticking away from Joe Biden and leaning more towards Trump. And obviously, Biden is suffering with a lot of these younger people because of the, Israel-Palestine conflict. So I think a lot of the momentum is going in Trump's direction. But like I said, it's a longer way to the election, and a lot can happen before then. We have, the criminal trials. We're expecting a verdict in the first one this week. That's probably going to be the only one that goes to trial, honestly. But like, all of these factors will weigh on people's decisions coming up. But as of now, I think he has a very good shot at winning back the White House this time.
Last question, because I know we've only got you for a couple more minutes, Alex. Is RFK a factor at all in this race, would you say? Because initially it seemed like he would take more from Biden. Now it seems like he's taking a little bit from both sides. What's your thought on the RFK question?
I don't think he's going to be a major factor. A lot of that might have to do with if he gets on a debate stage. A lot of the thing, like exactly like the rubber chicken type thing, trying to go at Trump for not debating. I don't even think that Trump said he wouldn't debate him. But the thing is, it's like Biden's the one who had all of these conditions for the debate and had the condition to have no RFK and no crowd and all of these things. And it's CNN's debate. Donald Trump simply said yes. If Donald Trump said, I don't want to debate because RFK is on the stage, Joe Biden would say he was making excuses and he's a chicken. Trump has been saying for months that he wants to debate Joe Biden. So for RFK to kind of like turn the tables on Trump and say he's a chicken for not wanting to debate is, I don't know. It seemed like RFK had a stronger candidacy, and right now he's kind of grasping at straws. Like you said, he made the last-ditch effort to become the Libertarian nominee as well. So I think his campaign is kind of waning at this point, and it might be an attractive option for some, but I think at the end of the day, people are going to have the same analysis like they do with even in the libertarian side of things, where they're going to look at results. They're going to say, I don't think RFK can win a state, and I think that Donald Trump is a lot better than Joe Biden, and so I'm actually going to vote for Donald Trump and vote for someone who has the opportunity to make actual change. So that's what I think on the RFK thing.
Alex, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners or maybe plug before we let you go today?
Just my X profile at ALX.
There it is. Alex Lorusso, MAGA Libertarian Alliance. Thank you very much for being so generous with your time this morning, Alex, and good luck out there. We'll see you out on the campaign trail.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.